Welcome, everyone, to the October You Already Own It Cloud Office Hours. I'm Ken Nubler, your host and one of the senior cloud strategists here at Planet Technologies. And today, we're going to talk about developing solutions for AI and how to get started. In addition to our guest speaker joining me today, we have the whole cloud strategist team below, as well as our You Already Own It program team, who consists of Casey Clayton, who's our program lead, Kim Snyder, who's our benefits coordinator that works with us on scheduling briefings and making sure questions that are submitted to the program are answered in 24 hours. And lastly, our You Already Own It sponsor is Steve Winter, who's our executive vice president of business development and delivery. If you have questions today, please put them in the chat, raise your hand, or you can always email us at youalreadyownit@go-planet.com. For more information about today's program and some of our past blogs and cloud office hour recordings, be sure to check out the links in the newsletter. If you're not getting the newsletter, please reach out to Kim Snyder and she'll get you signed up. Also, to be sure to check out the included useful links at the end of the presentation. One last thing, we're going to get started with the recording. I hear that we have lots of questions in the chat, so good. We'll make sure we have time for that at the very end. Well, welcome to this month's office hours. While much attention has been around Copilot lately, we're going to take a switch things back a little bit. And this month, we're going to talk about AI generically and what a good methodology is for developing AI solutions and how to get started. Today's Cloud Office Hours will focus on the critical steps in working towards successful AI projects and building use cases. So, with me today is Jason Griffith, who is our Director of Cloud Computing and is going to discuss how to evaluate AI use cases and what to consider. Next, we have Rocco Kufari. Rocco is passionate about the cloud security. He's an Azure architect with 25 years of experience in developing and designing and implementing cloud solutions across diverse clients and industries. Most recently, Rocco has been working with our customers on Azure security assessments and implementing Azure AI solutions for our customers. Rocco's here also to give a short demo in the use case about, he's going to give a use case in the chat playground with Azure OpenAI Studio to test and deploy chatbots in Azure Web Services. Also with me is Tim Lynch, who will talk briefly about some of the AI envisioning work sessions. Casey, are you saying you can't hear me?
No, we can hear you. We can hear you.
All right, cool. So with me also is Tim Lynch, who's been working with us recently on doing some AI envisioning sessions. And this is a free workshop that Planet is offering as part of the You Already Own It program. So stick around and to the end and to hear more about that. With that said, thanks for everyone for joining me. We have a full agenda, so let's go ahead and get started. As always, I always like to do a quick poll, so don't be shy. These answers are anonymous. We just want to know, where are you in your Azure AI journey and your set of priorities for the next 12 months? If you could go ahead and answer that, that would be great. And we'll review the results at the end. Our agenda today, we're going to talk about the current and potentials around AI, defining the AI use case, steps to building the AI use case. Then we'll move to evaluating the AI solution. We'll talk and break down the use cases by looking at it through some different lenses. Jason's going to do that. He's going to talk about getting started with AI. And of course, Rocco's got that demo that he's going to show. It's going to be about 10 minutes or so. And then finally, we'll talk about the discovery workshop, the AI discovery and visioning workshop that Tim's been doing with our customers recently. And of course, we'll save time for questions and feedback. So let's go ahead and get started. According to Gartner, by the end of this year, 75% of enterprises will shift from piloting to operationalizing artificial intelligence. The question is, will they be successful? And how do they measure success? Today, we're going to give you some practical advice on how to get started with AI use cases and hopefully have some good outcomes. So AI is a powerful tool that can transform industries, and we need to understand AI's potential to truly be successful. We need to use AI to address business challenges, pain points, and provide innovative solutions. The most important aspect to keeping in mind is that AI is just another tool in your toolbox, and you need to focus on the data and the business case and not so much the technology. We'll talk about some technologies today, but it's really about the data and the business case. AI should really just be another tool in your toolbox to address your business challenges. And of course, data is at the heart of it. But before you dive into the data analysis, it's crucial for your organization to have a shared understanding of the AI use case goals. Just analyzing the data won't work. Your objectives must be clearly linked to the business problem at hand. You should review your organization's strategy or major pain points or problems and align them to potential outcomes of the AI use cases accordingly. Our goal today is to guide you through the essential steps to get started with AI, emphasizing the importance of defining the AI use case and evaluating its desirability, its viability, and its feasibility, ultimately leading down a path where you can leverage AI as a valuable tool to provide a solution or solutions to some of your biggest business challenges. So the first challenge in developing AI solutions is defining your business case. For defining the use case, you should understand the difference between predictive and generative AI. This will help you with the mindset for your future use case so you know what path you need to go down. Predictive AI uses historical data to predict future outcomes. Common applications include demand forecasting, customer churn prediction, and risk assessment, while generative AI really creates new content based on existing data, right? So some examples of that is, creating new text generation, image creation, music composition. So really creating something from nothing, but based on your data. While we have been talking generically about AI, let's switch to what Azure AI services can offer. This is about matching your use case to one or more of these services, which is very common, and that can include large language models as well, which we'll talk about on our next slide. Starting with Azure AI services, they are a set of comprehensive tools for various AI applications. The one we see quite often is document intelligence. AI document intelligence is a tool that uses advanced AI to automatically pull out important information from your documents like text, tables, and data points. This means that you can quickly turn documents into useful data without having to do it manually. You can use ready-made models or create your own. We have worked with some states on Forms Recognizer, which automates the extraction of the information from forms. Another one is Vision, which is tools for image recognition and analysis. I read recently that a state was using this for handing out tickets to truckers looking down at their phones. Imagine that. Thank gosh they're not giving it to us who are driving cars. But there is something here for almost all use cases, like speech or OpenAI services, which provides advanced generative AI capabilities. Think about AI enabling your Azure subscriptions or Azure data landing zones or even secure research landing zones. Lots to choose from here, and you can actually combine these together to make unique use cases. Moving on from AI services, now let's talk about the new player on the block, LLMs, or large language models. As I mentioned, we can build use cases that utilize AI services and let them feed directly into LLMs. If we specifically look at LLMs or AI models, they can enhance productivity and innovation across various organizations. They can enhance productivity like automating content creation, email drafting, customer support chatbots, issue resolution, data analysis and insights using text analysis, summarizing research, language translation, learning and development, and the list goes on. You get the picture. When thinking about use cases, think about the data your organization has. Create a list of problems or pain points or inefficient processes that you have where AI can help with specific business problems. Your AI use case needs to be tied back to the business problem. This will help tremendously as you look for funding and get stakeholders involved. It is also very important that you have correct and clean data to build your use cases, and that may take some time, especially if your data is not clean or has no governance. Finally, in building a use case, consider both strategic and tactical solutions and evaluate the potential positive impact on the business and possible money savings as well as the soft benefits. Next, you need to fit the use case to the AI model. Choosing the right AI type depends on your business needs. Are you looking for predictive AI, which is great for, let's say, analyzing behavior or historical trends? Or are you looking for more of a generative AI, which is perfect for creating new content? So it just helps you take you down the path. Next, to implement a machine learning model, first you need to build a sandbox to experiment safely. Obviously, you don't want to do this in your live production environments. You should experiment with different models and approaches, then test the model's performance and adjust parameters for better accuracy. You may find your data needs cleaning. You should also build your training and test data sets to know what the expected outcomes are you're looking for. Finally, you'll need to continuously upload new data to keep the model updated and improve its performance over time. Make sure you also have enough data for the model to understand the goal. So like if you're looking for an outcome that has to do with seasonal workers, you need to give it enough data to see the outcome. Years of data will be necessary. So here we're talking about training the model or the use case, right? So to train the AI model, you'll want to make sure you choose the features you're looking for in that model. For instance, Azure AI services using an LLM or a combination of services and features. Once you've identified your features and services, you can ask, can I get these done with just prompt engineering, or do I need to do some fine tuning? Prompt engineering involves crafting specific instructions for the AI to follow, while fine tuning means training that AI further with additional data to specialize it for your needs. In many cases, both of these will be needed. Prompt engineering can be quicker, but fine tuning offers more tailored results. Obviously, the next step is testing your model use case. We are going to test what we develop just like we would with any other development project. You should have a clean data set tested based on training criteria, as well as you should have your testing data sets. And finally, testing your prompts to make sure that you get the desired outcomes. This will be an ongoing process, and new capabilities and variables will change. Next, I'm going to turn this over to discuss the way to evaluate your use cases, and Jason's going to take it over from here. Jason?
Thanks, Ken. So, here at Planet and in an organization before this, I was heavily involved in building and architecting various AI capabilities for business stakeholders, as well as defining what it would look like for customers. And when it comes down to is as you come up with your use case, and we'll talk through a few of those, you want to put it through the lens of what's been defined really around, is it desirable? If we solve this problem, will this solve the problem for our stakeholders? Will this address the issue? And here's a great example. We had a set of stakeholders that wanted to be able to predict student success for a university. Sounds like a great objective. And so we went through the process of building out a predictive model based on historical data of students. So it's absolutely desirable, right? If we could predict student success, then we could dictate classes, then we could dictate how many classes we needed to have and how many teachers we would need. So you could take out all of that manual planning. But then when we got to the viable, right, is it good for long-term success? Yes, it's absolutely viable. If we can solve this problem, it would, reduce costs around planning. It would make sure we had students assigned to the right classes. There was a lot of intricate and extravagant problems and solutions that it would solve. But when we got to the feasible side, as we started building out the different machine learning prompts that would analyze the data, what we really came to find was, can the student pay for the class? Became the number one concern. And so if you can't solve for one of those prompts, then the actual use case that you're trying to solve for really isn't feasible because you don't have the data to be able to potentially support it. So when you start analyzing those use cases, it really becomes a very specific lens to take it through. And then a lot of times, until you actually have the playground or a sandbox for which you can evaluate this, then you don't know if it's feasible until you start looking at your data and running it through the different scenarios. When we took it through another similar example where we built out a chat bot to enable both internal staff and for students to be able to open up tickets or check on status of grades or check on status of transcripts, we found that was all desirable by students because it prevented calls. But we also found it was viable because all of our systems that we had the data stored. And it ended up being feasible because we could build the integration hooks into those specific data, and we had the ability to align a student login to their specific records through the student ID. So the use case became feasible. So when we drive into each of these very specifically around desirability, it's gathering the insights. Your business stakeholders, your teams, they know where the business challenges are. They know where the productivity gains can happen. And so it's important to just have those discussions and conduct surveys to collect opinions, have focus groups, implement pilot or data exploration tests to evaluate real world application. It's once you have your sandbox, this is something that Rocco will dive into in a little bit. You now have the ability to test many different scenarios to get to understand whether or not you have the data and the processes to be able to support that outcome. Also, it's ensuring the solution addresses a real need. Analyze that feedback from a key requirement, adjust a solution based on stakeholder and customer input. And when giving another example around desirability, we're talking to another university in a research department who was looking to be able to, out of their research data, remove PHI data from all of their research documents. And so that is something a generative AI model has the ability to do, but you have to train it on what's PHI, and you have to train it on what the removal of it with it, and then what's that document going to look like when you remove that PHI. So taking it through that lens, it's very desirable because now a person won't have to go through thousands of documents to remove the PHI. We've built a tool and a process to be able to feed that data. The model goes through it, removes the data, and now you have a new output of a document all completely done and completely automated with a language model. Taking that same lens through from a viability, is it sustainable in the long term? So over time, will this model get better? Will it get smarter? What else can you add to it? Also, will it continue to deliver the expected benefits? What happens if there's a business process change in the organization? Or if a new system comes online, how is that going to impact the solution over time, as well as market trends or external forces may change? So again, how is that going to impact the validity of the model of what you're trying to prove or what you're trying to automate within the environment? And again, it's alignment with the business. This is more importantly a business stakeholder led project. You want to make sure it supports the strategic objectives, like student success we use as an example, but also even the tactical projects like removing PHI data from research projects. So it again, while it may not be part of a significant business driver, there's still productivity gains you can get from AI that won't meet a strategic criteria, but it's a very tactical engagement that's saving people time because of the volume of data or the volume of the documents that you have to analyze. And then again, is it feasible? We have seen, many organizations have grandiose ideas of what AI has the opportunity to solve for. But again, you may not have the data or the resources available to be able to fit that use case. So for instance, what if you wanted to build a predictive AI engine that was able to provide the perfect price for a customer based on various different scenarios? Well, it's not just about the data that you have historically. There's also external data that you have to look at to be able to mesh in with that. And again, market forces or government regulations or those external data points may change over time or may not even be available to be able to support that use case. And then on the support and maintenance side, you have the ability to maintain it and scale it as necessary, or even tweak the foundation at its core if something dramatically changes within the organization. So, getting started with AI, and it's really around two different areas to begin with. And it's about one, coming up with those use cases. Again, big or small, doesn't really matter. But what you're trying to make do is prove that you have the data to support your outcome. And so starting with a sandbox of Azure AI services, starting with one or two use cases, starting with experiments. Once you have the environment, now you're going to want to experiment on that data to make sure it's going to prove out your point. So from an example, when we were going through the student success criteria, we pulled out a small data set from our SIS environment, and we took that data and started building a predictive AI model against that data. And we started adjusting the weights of certain categories. So can the student pay for it? How does the student pay for it? What are the classes that they've taken historically? What were the grades of those classes? Is this their first or second time through a university? Are they a transfer into the university? So again, it's taking those small data sets and you're running experiments to get some idea of whether or not it'll work. And it's also embracing the journey. You are going to learn and expect from not every idea is going to pan out. And that's okay because you're learning the nuances and you're adjusting ongoing. Your initial AI use case may not meet expectations because you may have try to hit that grand slam as part of the experience. And for instance, if you're in a selling organization or if you're in a research grant organization and you've come up with a use case that says, I want to be able to streamline writing a grant or fulfilling that grant request. And I just want to go into an LLM and say, complete this grant, right? That may not be practical because the LLM may not understand what a grant is. It may not understand what the costs are or how it's going to solve the problem or what your means are to solve the problem. But what it can do is if you look at it and break it down into smaller chunks, you could have it fill out 50% completion or 40% completion. And that may be a significant savings from a timing perspective to be able to fulfill and work on more grants because you've broken it into chunks. You're also going to want to fine tune and engage in the prompt engineering to make sure it's answering the questions that you're asking and people understand the questions that it needs to ask. And then continuous improvement, right? The more data and the refining that you do of those models, the more success that you're going to find from it. And then sometimes you're just going to say, this won't work because we don't have the data. So let's go to the next use case. But I can't stress enough about experimentation and aligning it to very small proof of concepts before you start trying to grow the use cases is very critical to these engagements. The other part is, understanding the costs of AI. So, setting up these services and everybody understands that Azure is a consumption-based environment. And every time you run something, it's going to cost something. So again, sticking with that, data exploratory or experimentation projects, you can have small data sets or small document sizes to be able to validate your AI use case. You also don't have to deploy the perfect landing zone to have this enabled. You can deploy the core services that are just isolated to you with your application or with your UI or chatbot model that you want to deploy in that environment, just to be able to test how it interacts with your different data sources and to understand if cleanup is required. You can also leverage the Azure price calculator to determine what your budgetary cost is. Maybe you want to set a $500 budget a month, just making up random numbers. And you can understand, okay, if I leverage these 3 services, how much data could I potentially use against it? And now I can set up an Azure budget to manage that spend to make sure I don't go over and things aren't just running, a little bit wild in the back end, But again, you're making progress and you're working towards a level of success with that environment. And it's also about embracing the journey. You know, everything's going to have its challenges, but it's a constant learning environment. And once you've done one or two, then you start to understand the thought approach that you can take to these environments. And understanding, you know, adjustments of the model and data are part of the process. You're going to continually add or remove data to these models because you're trying to solve a very specific problem or solve for a very specific productivity use case that you're looking at. And the first few that you come up with may not deliver the anticipated results, but that's okay because you have the environment and you can continue to evaluate different scenarios. And then continuous improvement, you know, validate and refine, look for those new insights. But again, as what Ken had said before I hand it off to Rocco from a demo perspective, you really want to start, when you start investigating your AI scenarios, you're going to want to pick from whether or not we're going to do something with a generative AI model in terms of text, images, documents, and what is the output that we're looking for, to predictive, which gets into the more machine learning scenarios that looks more from a data level of understanding what a potential future prediction would be with the data that you have or new insights. So with that, we'll turn it over to Rocco to run through a generative AI use case and what a playground or a sandbox looks like in that environment. Rocco?
Thanks, Jason. Hey, everybody. I'm Rocco Kafari. I am an Azure architect here at Planet, and I'm going to give a demo on some of what's available in the Azure OpenAI services, in Azure OpenAI Studio. So we heard today already about building a sandbox or a playground. So we're going to start with the OpenAI Studio playground. And other than being a really fun place to hang out, what is this thing really doing for us? So what we have here on the first part of our screen here, if everybody can see my mouse, we pick an AI model, okay, and we deploy that model. In this case, we're using ChatGPT 3.5, which isn't the very newest model, but it's got more language than we'll ever need to get out of it. And the instructions for this particular AI deployment are, you are an assistant that helps people find information, which is possibly the most generic thing we could ever get it. But when you use a public AI service that's not specialized to your use case, this is pretty much all it's told, is you're an assistant, help them, you know, do what they want. In our case, though, for our demo, what we're going to do is we are going to change this, and we're going to say, you are an assistant that helps employees, so not just people, but we're going to get real specific here. We're going to tell it, you're an assistant that helps employees with questions about their healthcare plans, employee handbooks, financial policies, research data, management, and other internal inquiries. All responses must be brief, factual, and this is the most important part, everybody, strictly based on the sources provided below. So if I haven't uploaded let's say I upload a document that has a company policy, let's say it's our computer use policy, and I ask this chatbot, I say, hey, can you make me a recipe for banana cream pie? It's going to tell me no, because that information does not exist in my company's computer use policy. Another option of what we can put here, though, is we can tell it, oh, I'm sorry, there's another thing on this one. This we would call a strict source only prompt, okay? We can also talk a little bit about if we want it to use our data, but also use some of its general knowledge. And that term general knowledge is really important. So what we can do is we give it a very similar prompt, except this time we tell it, hey, if it's not in the document, give us some language around what's going on. But really, these are really great for doing, this is a great way to modify the AI to work in the way that you need it to work. So in other words, if you have hundreds of gigs of documents uploaded and you're supposed to be chatting with this, you don't want your employees to be getting answers that aren't really grounded in your data. And that word grounded is really important. So when we add our data, what do you mean? What do we do? Do we just click the upload button? Well, this is a deeper topic. I'm not going to get too technical here, but basically what we do is we can leverage an Azure blob storage, which any of us that have anything in Azure, we have something in blob storage somewhere. And that just means completely unstructured data. Maybe it's a bunch of images, a bunch of documents, and some really big video files, whatever it is. But we can use any of these data sources within Azure and connect them to our chatbot here. And then we can add some parameters. We can tell it, so for example, with temperature, this is where you decide how creative this thing is going to get. In some use cases, we really want a lot of creativity. And in other use cases, we want zero creativity. We want to stick to the facts. So when we're done with our chatbot and we've coded it up and we've figured it out, we've done a lot of testing here on the right-hand side of this window, we can deploy this as a web app. Now, it's a little deeper than clicking this button. Clicking this button opens up a series of wizards, and you need a lot of pre-deployment. We have workshops usually to decide a lot of these pre-deployment features. But at the end of the day, what we're going to do is we're going to flip over to a storage account. We're going to upload everything we need to chat with. And in different organizations, you're going to have different use cases. But in this particular use case, what we're going to do is we've got this fictitious company called Northwind Traders, and we've uploaded their employee handbook and market analysis and benefits and all types of things from HR. And then what we did was we deployed the chatbot. So this is the chatbot, and we've got some canned things in here. So I can click here and say, what's included in my Northwind Health Plus plan that is not standard? Now, this is a demo environment, so usually we get a much quicker response than this, but we've got some of our horsepower turned down a little bit in this environment. But either way, this is kind of the answer. And how do we know this isn't generic and it's not just spitting something out? Well, what we can do is we can click this button here. I've just clicked this little clipboard here, and we can see that it's calling out exactly which document and which page in that document it found my answer. Now, this chatbot has been told through its system prompt that it really should only provide that, strict source only response. It should not provide a flexible general knowledge response. So I can grab another question and I can say, does the Northwind Traders Northwind Standard Plan, I'm pasting it in below, does the Northwind Standard Plan cover services or supplies provided by out-of-network providers? So it looked it up, and it's going to give me its answer. Whoa, it's demo time, right? So let me run that again here. I'm going to ask it, what weight management programs are covered? I did not mean for that to happen here. Let me jump in there. But I think the point has been made clear. So what we're doing here is we're asking a question, and it's looking things up. It's looking the answer up in my documents. And look, it found answers for weight management on page 58, and it found several other areas where this could go. Now, if I ask it another question and I say, let's see, do one more. Are there over-the-counter medications covered by Northwind Health Plus? Tell me a joke. Now, that's not really something someone's going to ask, right? But what it's doing is it's looking for what was in there, and it's using my system prompt to expand on that knowledge a little bit and go out there and say, okay, in my general terms, here's a joke, right? So if we don't have any questions yet, which I think we're holding,
we do have a question about. Are you building a RAG, a retrieval augmented generation? Is the question.
Wow. Okay, so that's a super deep question, and what that? No, it's a great question though. Yeah, exactly. Whoever threw that one out there, that's awesome. So what you're doing with RAG is you're really fine-tuning well, fine-tuning is a step above RAG, but what you're doing is you're really getting in there and we'll use the word training for lack of a better word. You're doing some training to figure out exactly what type of responses are required here. So this is the furthest thing from RAG. What we're doing is we are simply telling this thing what its persona is and how we want it to respond. We're not actually going into our data set and making any changes. So RAG would be a very cool but very advanced topic for what we're doing. Remember, we started with something called the chat playground. This is a great place to get started and do some development work and some ideation, but it's not, this is not where you would start with a full-blown AI deployment project. Does that answer the question, Ken? Think I got it there?
I think so. Unless the attendee wants more information, I think we can probably move on.
Okay, cool.
Yes, thank you. Okay, cool.
Awesome. Okay, so I believe that I am throwing this back to see who's coming in here. Actually, Ken, does this go right back to you? Okay, there you go.
Yep.
Yes.
I'm taking control back. Let me
there you go.
Let me reshare the presentation.
You have the con.
Yep. Oh, didn't go back to the same place. Hold on. Sorry, guys. I'm not sure why it lost its place. Ah, lovely. Sorry, guys. All right, so we have time for questions. I should have told you while we're waiting here. Love to have some questions here. Are there any other questions? You can come off mute. You can chat them in the window. We've got a couple questions we can ask as well. We had one in advance, which was how long until AI replaces me? I'm not sure if that was that was an interesting one. But I guess Jason or Jason or so, how would you articulate starting an approach to getting, I think we talked about it today, but I just want to know what your thoughts were.
So I think there's the best place to start, which is probably the toughest place to start, is the idea generation around the use case.
Yep.
There are thousands of articles out there that talk about training models that discusses the RAG concepts and how it makes your AI assistant better. But when it comes down to it, we laid out a few use cases that we've actively worked on from strategic through tactical. Is just thinking about what would simplify productivity for staff, or what would enhance customers' experiences with your organizations. And so, going through an ideation session, whether it's internally and just throwing out ideas or concepts and whittling those down through the desirable, viable, and feasible lens would help you. And then secondly, on top of that, it's getting to where now can I start evaluating these use cases, and where is the data, and how do I start small and grow over time?
Excellent. Thanks, Jason. We had some questions. I mean, we had some answers to the poll that we did earlier, and we had a couple folks that said they're already using it. I would love to know if you feel comfortable sharing. That'd be great. If not, that's fine too. But if you're welcome to open up the mics and talk about how your experience is so far, maybe you're having some problems. Maybe we could help. Just kind of curious if you'd like to share anything. For those of you that are still, looks like the largest percent of folks, 42%, are still trying to figure out use cases. If you're trying to throw out something to us, we can kind of talk about that. Otherwise, we can move on and talk about, Tim is here to talk about the AI envisioning workshop that's free for your asking, and we can certainly move on down there. We got a question about, does using the chat playground consume Azure credits? Great question.
I can speak to that, Ken.
Yeah, sure. Great question.
Yeah, it is a good question. So when you're in the chat playground, or when you've already deployed a full-blown solution, on the back end is an OpenAI model. So it's either ChatGPT 3.5 or 4 or 4.0 or any more that come out and are released. And you're leveraging that model every time you type something into the chatbot, whether it's in the playground or part of a full deployment. So
Gotcha.
there's a ton of information out there about how many tokens per second, and you can get really deep. But the short answer is yes, you are consuming when you're using the playground. It is Azure consumption.
Are there any free ways to get started?
There's plenty of free ways outside of
Azure AI.
Azure OpenAI.
Yeah,
But when
yeah.
you're in Azure, I think Jason touched on this before with Azure consumption. When you're doing something, you're being charged for it. Now, are they charging you by the word? No, it's got a lot to do with how many tokens or words per minute you're doing and some things like that. But yes, there is a cost.
Gotcha. Thank you. Great question. Thank you for asking the question too. We'll pause for another minute or a few seconds here. Is there any other questions or anybody want to share any experiences, good or bad, that they've had so far with trying to create some use cases? No?
I actually had a question. I was wondering, so I've done some work with AI running like OLAMA and stuff in my home lab and trying to bring some of that experience into more of the professional space. And I was just wondering if you had any recommendations on resources or books or other materials for understanding some more of the stuff like the training and some of the more in-depth AI concepts and getting a better understanding of like, how do we train AIs? What data should we use? Data sanitization and some of those more not building the AI, but pruning the AI, if you will.
So
Ken,
Ken,
you mentioned a great book to me last week, but I can't remember the name of it. What was the book that you were recommending?
I wasn't recommending a book, but I did send some links, and I think we have those as part of this You Already Own It session, where there's some links about how to dive a little deeper. But just to kind of answer the specific question that was asked, one thing that I've got to tell you, and unfortunately this is not a snapshot in time thing, but there are many YouTubers out there that are producing like a once a week Azure, or not Azure, but once a week like AI news type of video. And if you just pick somebody that speaks to you, it doesn't have to be perfectly accurate or any of that. But if you kind of view those once a week, over time, you'll start to build up that knowledge of things move so quickly. It's what was possible yesterday and then what's possible today. Because what we're seeing, especially in like your home implementation of this, your lab environment, is we used to have 12 different services. Ken had a slide earlier today that showed all those Azure AI services, and they were all separate entities. And now every 5 minutes, it seems like ChatGPT or Claude Opus or one of those does, it does 9 of those in one area. So
I know what it was. You were talking about the AI snake oil book, Rocco, and I don't know if you'd agree that would be good for other folks as well.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there you go. And I see Tim threw something in the chat, and Jason mentioned Substack.
Ken,
so yeah.
Yeah, Ken, that was me. There was a book that just came out written by 2 AI data scientists. It's called AI Snake Oil, and it sounds like it's negative towards it. It's not. It's there are things that you can do. There's things that you can't do, but it's really, it's what is artificial intelligence can do, what it can't do, and how to tell the difference. Because everybody will tell you there is no single killer app that you just deploy and you make artificial intelligence, whether it's generative AI or predictive AI, come alive in your organization. It has made significant progress since I built my first chatbot, 4 years ago, in which we had to code around the natural language building, and where the generative AI is today. It's probably would have saved us 50% of our time from which we started. But if you're looking for some initial reading about where the market is today from the perspective of 2 professors out of Stanford, the AI Snake Oil book is very good.
Awesome. Thank you.
Awesome. And we have some links at the end of this program as well. So let's move on. I want to make sure we save some time for Tim. So Tim is one of our organizational change management specialists, and we're offering through the You Already Own It program a free Azure envisioning workshop, an AI envisioning workshop. So I'll let Tim take it from here if you want to just talk a little bit about the experiences so far with working with the customers and kind of about the workshop.
Yeah, so what we've done is we have taken the work from front end of innovation, which is usually 5 days in person activity, which goes through the creative problem solving, and we've condensed that down to a facilitated 1.5 to 2 hour conversation with you. And then based on that conversation, we then use machine learning and AI to put a scarecrow together, a straw man, if you will, of different AI concepts throughout your organization. And what this whole purpose is really meant to do is to allow you and your teams to kind of freely associate, ideate, build off of, improv. Like there are so many different frameworks that are put in that we're taking pieces of to make this session happen, so that you can kind of see, like, if this is where we wanted to apply AI, what would be some of the requirements that are needed? What would be some of the benefits we could assume? And it really helps people at the early stages to start thinking through those business use cases that Jason was talking about in the beginning.
Yeah.
And before I really stop myself, sorry.
Are you continuing, Tim? Or?
Yeah, no,
you're done. Okay,
yep.
So if you're interested in today's conversation and you want to consider, our free AI workshop, just reach out to the You Already Own It program, Kim or Casey, or your account executive, your cloud strategist. Doesn't matter. Just let us know, and we'll be happy to get that scheduled for you and reserve some time to talk about AI envisioning and your use cases. So we'd love to do that with you. Here's just some details about the workshop, who's it targeted to, kind of the agenda that we go over, things to think about, the objective, and so forth. So definitely take a look. You'll get this presentation afterwards. If you're interested, again, just let us know, and we'll happy to get that scheduled. It's free workshop for you all to get started on thinking about use cases. Here's the helpful links that we mentioned. The which AI I should use is really great. Bracco selected that one specifically. I've watched it. It's awesome, talking about the different tools and which ones to use. And also want to make sure that this is the You Already Own It program, right? So that's what does this cloud office hours. If you're not a member of this service, please make sure that we get you onboarded. There's all kinds of, I think there's over 25 different workshops that are free in a non-sales environment for us to work together and make sure that we're helping you on your cloud journey. We want to be partners here and trusted advisors as we move forward. So please feel free to reach out to us if any of these workshops look like of interest to you all, specifically, the AI workshop that we talked about today, but certainly other ones like a cloud maturity assessment, a licensing review, accelerating adoption for M365. It covers lots of different areas. There's something for everybody. Power Platform. They don't have to be consumed in a timeline. You can do one now. You can do one next year. It doesn't matter. So please feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to do these workshops with you. The next office hours is going to be on November 14th, so please mark your calendars, save the date. We'll be looking forward to talking to you then. And then I'd love to, one more survey, obviously want to know how today's session was. Was it helpful on a scale from 1 to 5? Very helpful, not at all helpful. Just would love to hear about that. And that's it. At Planet, we've successfully delivered numerous AI engagements and have helped dozens of customers solve their biggest challenges. If you're ready to take the next step and want to explore AI use cases, please reach out to your account executive, cloud strategist, or You Already Own It program member. That's a wrap. We'll hang out for a few minutes if there's any other questions.